Well, it's a very exciting day for me because I have never driven a Porsche 914. I love Porsches, I love vintage Porsches, but never had a chance to drive one of these. Of course, I've known about them my whole life. This was the Volkswagen Beetle of Porsches. We're going to get into that as we go for a drive. It isn't really, but it's now become a collectible car as Porsche is going up in value. All of the old ones, people are snapping them up. People are now looking at ones that they might be able to afford. And this one is impeccable. The owner that is getting rid of it now has done an amazing job preserving this car. Originally, it was green. And then about 15 years ago, the previous owner had this car for about 20 years. About 15 years ago, he got together with his buddy who owns a body shop, and over one winter, they took this whole car apart, repainted it inside, outside in Guards red. And when you look underneath the front hood, the frunk, and the rear trunk, the trunk, you can see the immaculate level of detail they went into to making this car absolutely correct. So before we go any farther, I want to say thanks to Core at Core Motor Cars for letting me borrow this car for the day. It's really easy to remember the website. It's corecars.com. And this car is going to be sold with a whole bunch of upgrades I'm going to tell you about in just a second. So a really cool car, a lot of fun, a nice nostalgia trip for me. So let's get in. I'll show you around the inside and I'll tell you all about the 914 and where it kind of fits in Porsche lore. You know, this is my first time sitting in a 914, and I gotta say, I like it. And it's quite different from a 911. And there's a few things that I wish modern car companies would do like they used to do in the old days, kick it old school. The first one is you don't have to put anything fancy on the doors, but get rid of the hard plastic and go to this soft sort of texturized vinyl look. You could do that in places in a modern car. It would look kind of cool. In addition, they could put carpet over the rocker panels. You know, when you get in and out and you scuff the plastic plates, you put carpet there. It's so nice. I wish they did that on modern cars. Now, how is it different from the 911? Well, you get 3 gauges behind the steering wheel instead of 5. And also, the middle part here is really quite open. There's 2 glove boxes. There's one there in the center of the dash, or off to the right, I should say. And there's another one here. And inside is the book. The book. Here's another thing that they could do that's very different from today. The owner's manual actually has schematic drawings of the engine, the chassis, kind of interesting little tidbits. You just don't get that in a modern reference manual anymore either. So in here is a combination of Porsche and Volkswagen, of course. Now the most notable is the ignition is not on the left-hand side like it is with most 911s and other even modern Porsches. It's on the steering column, and that's a tip that this was definitely designed and co-developed with Volkswagen. As I mentioned, 3 gauges behind the steering wheel. You also get a voltage meter, a temperature gauge, and a clock in the center of the car. But the rest of the dash is kind of like a 911. The radio is farther away from the driver, closer to the passenger, heat controls, and really comfortable seats. So you sit right in the middle of the car. This was kind of a harbinger for what was to come from Porsche. Think about the Boxster. The Boxster has a front trunk, and a rear trunk, cargo area, mid-engine, the engine's right behind me, and you sit right in the middle. This is basically like a Boxster, except instead of a convertible, all 914s came with a T-top. Now, I'm not going to take it off and wrestle with it. I'm going to leave it on, but yeah, convertible at the same time, which made them very attractive. So as I mentioned, completely redone with the body, and now a brand new engine. So let's fire it up and I'll tell you all about that. So this car has a brand new engine just behind me here. Not only does it have a new engine, when you have the engine out, what are you going to do? You're going to put in a new clutch. It's got a new clutch. Got a new exhaust system. So this engine has hotter cams. It's got the dual Weber carburetors and a sporty exhaust system. Makes this car a little bit more modern. So this 914, when it was sold, had a 1.8 liter engine. Now I mentioned the previous owner spent a lot of time restoring the body, but the engine was put on the we'll get to it plan, and he never got to it. So Core at Core Motor Cars, when he got this car, he decided, am I going to rebuild the 1.8 or am I going to do something different? So he sourced a 2.36 liter flat 4 crate motor from California, had it shipped here to Vancouver and installed with those hotter cams and the Weber carbs and all that kind of stuff. By the way, whoever buys this car, you get the original motor as well if you want it. And it ups the power. So this car wouldn't have even had 100 horsepower when it was brand new. And now it has about 140 horsepower, which is a marked difference with this car because it is so small. In addition, this era of car had a 5-speed manual transmission. Now, most cars in the early 70s had 4-speed manuals and automatics were 3 speeds, some even 2 speeds. This is a 5-speed dog-leg transmission. So first gear is down where second gear would be and reverse is up near first gear. It does take a little while to get used to it, but you know, after hitting reverse a couple of times, you kind of get used to it. So just what the heck was a 914? Well, if you know your Volkswagen Porsche history, you know that the Porsche family is one of the founding families of Volkswagen. And Volkswagen and Porsche, even though they were separate companies, they did a lot of work together. In fact, Porsche was the outsourced engineering arm for a lot of Volkswagen products. So when Volkswagen needed a car to replace the Karman Gia, and Porsche needed a car to replace the entry-level 912 4-cylinder variant of the 911, they hatched a plan, and this is it. Now, this was meant to be sold as a Volkswagen and a Porsche, but Porsche made a pitch to Volkswagen and said, we don't want to have a Volkswagen variant of the same car that we have. So they decided to just push forward as a Porsche, and these cars originally were sold with a 6-cylinder D2 911 engine. And because it was so expensive to make this car with a 6-cylinder, it was roughly the same price or just slightly less than a base model 911. So people would go into a Porsche dealer, look at this and a 911, and they'd drive away with that car. So between 3,000 to 3,500 of the 6 cylinders were sold. But then Porsche continued to soldier on with the 4-cylinder variants all the way up to 1976. And in the early 70s, this was the best-selling Porsche. It was less expensive, certainly was cheaper to maintain because it had Volkswagen bits on it, and it also had the T-top. And this was really targeted at the North American market, and that's really who bought these cars. So as time went on and Porsche moved towards the 924 and these cars were discontinued, they became unloved, uncollected, and really kind of thrown away by the Porsche enthusiasts as a Volkswagen. But now people are starting to turn their attention to these cars because they're different, they're unique, they have the Porsche badge on it, and it's part of Porsche history. So even though it has a 4-cylinder behind me doing all the work, sounding great by the way, it doesn't sound like a Beetle, that's for sure. It's a cool car and very comfortable. You can stretch out in that passenger seat, you put the seat back and away you go. So this is a car that somebody that, you know, loves the Porsche brand, wants to have something cool, relaxing and fun to drive, but maybe doesn't want to have the appetite for all the maintenance that comes with a Porsche. You can have a little bit of your cake and eat it too. And this one is in fabulous shape. New engine, new clutch, new exhaust, looks great on the outside. It's a cool car. Well, thanks again to Core Motor Cars here in Vancouver for letting me borrow this car for the day. Someone's going to buy this car and it is impressive. It looks fantastic and it's got a brand new uprated crate engine in the back with a lot more horsepower than the original had, that's for sure. It's a cool car. As I keep on mentioning about Porsche, as a high tide lifts all boats, and with Porsche prices going up, especially over the last couple of years, this is now something that someone could buy that is really cool and affordable, kind of affordable. Now we do a cool, fun, or collectible car every Friday on the channel, so make sure you hit the subscribe and the notification bell, and we'll see you next Friday.